She stepped into the street and started to dance. There was no music, no celebration, no joy, but her feet moved anyway, and she couldn't stop. By nightfall, she collapsed. But the next day, she danced again. Then others joined her. 1, then 10, then 50. And soon, the city was trembling. No one knew why they were dancing, but they were all dying. It was a warm morning in July, 1518. The streets of Strasbourg were peaceful, almost sleepy. Bakers were pulling hot loaves from their ovens. Children played in the dirt, chasing chickens and shouting nonsense. The smell of barley and firewood drifted through the narrow alleys. It was the kind of morning no one remembers, because nothing unusual ever happened. But then, Frau Trophia stepped out of her small wooden home. Her dress clung to her body with sweat. Her eyes looked distant, as if she was sleepwalking. She said nothing. She looked at no one, and without a sound, she walked into the center of the street. People paused. They expected her to say something. Maybe she'd lost something. Maybe she was going to shout at her husband again. She had a loud voice, after all. But she didn't speak. She raised her arms slightly. Then one foot moved forward. Then the other. Her knees bent, her hips swayed. She was dancing. Slowly at first, like a dream. No rhythm. No music. No joy. Just movement. Her neighbors watched in silence. Some laughed. Some whispered. One old woman crossed herself. The sun climbed higher, and still Frau Trophia danced. Sweat poured down her neck. Her body trembled. But her feet kept stepping, gliding, turning, like she was trapped in a silent rhythm only she could hear. No one dared stop her. No one understood what they were seeing. Some thought she was possessed. Others thought she was mocking the saints. But as the sun began to set, she was still there, still dancing, her shoes torn, her face pale, and her eyes, those empty, haunted eyes, never blinked. Not once. No one knew it yet, but something had begun, and it would not stop. That night, Frau Trophia collapsed. Her body fell hard against the stone street, shaking with exhaustion. Her husband rushed to her, calling her name, holding her trembling shoulders. She didn't respond. Her eyes were half closed, her lips dry. But her legs still moved. Even as he carried her home, her feet twitched under her skirt, like they were still dancing. She didn't sleep that night. Not even for a moment. She moaned through the dark hours, body jerking in spasms, hands clawing at the air as if fighting invisible strings. Her husband wept. He tried cold water. He begged her to stop. But her body no longer listened. When the sun returned, so did she. Weak, bruised, bleeding, and still dancing. She walked back into the street like nothing had happened. And again, her body moved. This time faster. Her arms flailed wildly. Her neck snapped back and forth. People stepped away in fear. It was no longer a performance. It was suffering. She cried as she danced. Not from joy, but from pain. Her feet were blistered, her skin torn open from the day before. Yet she moved as if something was pulling her. A shadow, or a curse, or something deeper. And then something worse happened. Another woman joined her. A neighbor. Then a man. And another. By the end of that day, more than a dozen people were in the street. Some silent. Some screaming. But all of them dancing. The town stared in horror. They weren't celebrating. They weren't even awake, some said. It was as if something had reached inside them and taken control. And this was only the beginning. By the end of that cursed week, the number of dancers had nearly tripled. 32 people now filled the narrow lanes of Strasbourg, their bodies moving endlessly, without rest, without purpose. Some danced with stiff, jerking limbs like broken marionettes. Others twirled so fast they looked possessed, their heads flinging back, their eyes wide and unfocused. The sound of their feet slamming against the cobblestones echoed like war drums through the neighborhood. It was all anyone could hear. Step after step, hour after hour, day after day. People began to whisper. Some said it was witchcraft. Others blamed demons or a forgotten sin that had cursed the town. Children were kept indoors. Market stalls emptied. No one dared walk near the dancers. Fear clung to every doorway. The priests tried to pray it away, but even the holy words felt useless. The dancers didn't stop. Not for rain. Not for food. Not even for their own bleeding feet. Their shoes were gone. Their souls were raw. Some had passed out, only to rise minutes later and begin again. What made it more terrifying was the look in their eyes. Not madness. Not joy. Just emptiness. As if their souls had been taken and their bodies were dancing without them. Some wept while they danced. Some laughed in strange, broken voices. Some bled from their mouths. And yet they moved, as if something deeper than hunger or pain had gripped them. Something ancient and merciless. Every day, more joined. No one was safe. Not the young. Not the old. Not even the healthy. The plague didn't ask permission. It just chose you. And once it did, you danced. And danced. And danced. Until your body gave out. By the second week, the city of Strasbourg was no longer whispering. It was screaming. Nearly 100 people were now trapped in the same nightmare, dancing through the heat of day, the chill of night, the pouring rain. They danced through hunger, fever, wounds, and blood. The streets no longer looked like a market town. They looked like a battlefield. People collapsed, one by one, but even when they hit the ground, their bodies still twitched. Some tried to crawl. Others lay still, shaking, gasping, only to rise again with that same distant stare and begin dancing all over. The townspeople were terrified. They locked their doors, shut their windows, and refused to step outside. What if it was contagious? What if it was a punishment from heaven? Priests walked through the alleys holding crosses, sprinkling holy water on the dancers. But nothing changed. If anything, it got worse. The people who were still unaffected began to fall into despair. They were not just watching their neighbors die, they were watching them suffer. Slowly, publicly, uncontrollably. The local healers gave their own theories. Some blamed hot blood, claiming the summer heat had made the people's hearts boil with energy. Others said it was a fever of the brain. The bishop called it divine punishment, a test from God. He urged the people to fast and beg for forgiveness. But none of it worked. Nothing worked. And then, the city council made a decision. A desperate one. A dangerous one. One they would soon regret. The city council had never seen anything like this. Strasbourg was unraveling. The priests were failing. The doctors were guessing. And the bodies were piling up. Every day brought more dancers. Every night brought more death. The council gathered behind closed doors. The room was thick with fear. They argued, shouted. Desperation made strange ideas sound reasonable. And so, they came up with a solution. one they thought might work. If these people were dancing, then let them dance. Let them dance it out. They believed the dancers had too much energy in their blood, too much movement in their limbs. Maybe, just maybe, if they were allowed to dance freely, without interruption, it would burn out, like a fire running out of wood. So the council built a stage, a real one, in the center of the city. They cleared a hall and reinforced the floors. They even hired musicians, real ones, drummers, fiddlers, and flute players. Then, they brought the dancers there, and told them to keep going. What followed was chaos dressed as ceremony. The music filled the air, fast, loud, frantic. The dancers responded with wild, violent motion. They twirled so hard they tore their muscles. Their bones cracked under pressure. Their feet bled onto the wooden floorboards. But the musicians kept playing, faster, louder, as if they were trying to outrun death itself. Some dancers screamed so hard, their voices disappeared. Others collapsed mid-spin, twitching on the ground like dying birds. One man laughed while his mouth foamed. A young woman bit through her own tongue. The council watched with horror. This wasn't healing. This was something else. They had invited music into madness. And now, it wouldn't leave. By the third week, Strasbourg was breaking. The city that once bustled with laughter and trade now echoed with the pounding of feet and the cries of the dying. Over 400 people had been taken by the dancing. The stage was full. The streets were full. Even the church steps were full. And still, it spread. Fathers, mothers, children. No one was safe. Entire families had been pulled into the madness. A baker collapsed while delivering bread. A young girl spun in circles until her knees snapped. A pregnant woman danced until she fell, and never got back up. People stopped asking why. They just wanted it to end. The stage, once meant for healing, now looked like a place of torture. The wooden planks were stained dark with blood. Musicians no longer smiled. Their hands ached. Their eyes hollowed. But they were paid to play, so they did. Every beat pushed the dancers further into collapse. Some tried to escape, flee into the forest, hide in their homes, but even there their legs twitched. Their feet betrayed them. They always came back. Doctors were helpless. They wrapped feet, stitched wounds, whispered prayers. But the moment they finished, the body rose and danced again. Some called it mass hysteria. Others said it was spiritual possession. A few even blamed the river, saying something poisoned the water and seeped into their veins. But deep down, people feared the worst truth of all, that there was no reason, and no cure, only the endless rhythm, and the horror of being trapped inside your own body. Word of the dancing spread like wildfire. Strasbourg's nightmare became Europe's fascination. Messengers carried the tale to nearby towns. Then further. France, Germany, Italy. People whispered in fear. Have you heard about the city where people danced to their deaths? They called it cursed. Some said a demon had entered the soil. Others swore it was punishment, sent by a forgotten saint, angry at the sins of the people. Every version of the story grew darker with each retelling, and yet no one could explain why. Travelers came to see it for themselves. They watched from a distance, hands over their mouths, as men collapsed mid-step, their chests rising no more. A nobleman wrote in his journal that he saw a woman dance with a broken leg, dragging it like a rag doll. One priest claimed the devil had taken the form of music. Another warned that God had abandoned Strasbourg entirely. Then came a strange belief, whispers of a ghostly presence. Some claimed they saw shadows dancing beside the afflicted, shadows with no faces, no names, no feet, but still they danced. It chilled the hearts of even the bravest men. Others spoke of an ancient spirit, a forgotten entity from deep folklore, who cursed the land with eternal motion. Some even blamed the sky, saying it was something in the air. But the most haunting stories were not about demons or saints. They were about the dancers themselves, because some of them, even while dying, smiled, as if they had finally let go of something too heavy to carry, and that frightened people more than any ghost ever could. They said she was only 7, a little girl with thin arms, tangled hair, and a faded blue dress. No one knew her name. Some believed she had wandered in from another village. Others whispered that she had lost her parents to the plague, and had no one left. But what made her unforgettable were her shoes. They were red, not the bright red of silk or ribbons, but the deep, dark red of something stained, as if soaked in memory. She appeared one morning, barefoot, clutching the red shoes in her small hands. She walked toward the dancers, slowly, like she was sleepwalking. People called out to stop her, but she didn't turn. And then she put on the shoes. The moment they touched her feet, she began to sway. Her arms floated upward. Her body moved like wind through wheat. But her face was twisted, not in joy, but in pain. She cried, screamed, called for her mother. But her feet kept going, faster, wilder. Her legs buckled, but she did not fall. She danced until her skin turned pale and her lips cracked. Then she collapsed onto the cold stones. A priest ran to her. A nun covered her with a cloth. They said prayers. They sprinkled water. But even beneath the cloth, her hands still tapped, soft, rhythmic, like she was still trying to finish the dance. Some say she died that morning. Others say she still roams the forest beyond the city, dancing between the trees, waiting to be set free. But no one ever forgot the girl with the red shoes. And from that day forward, every new dancer was said to carry a piece of her spirit. By late August, the dancing began to slow. Not all at once, but like a fire finally running out of air. The streets that once echoed with frantic footsteps grew quieter. One by one, the dancers collapsed and didn't get back up. Their bodies, too weak. Their minds, too far gone. Some died right there, on the very cobblestones where they had danced for weeks. Others were carried away, their hearts no longer able to keep pace with the rhythm that had consumed them. And those who survived, they were not the same. Some were taken to the mountains, to a shrine hidden among the trees. The council believed the shrine was sacred, that maybe it could lift the curse. There, the survivors were told to pray, to confess, to rest. But few of them spoke. Most just stared, eyes empty, souls thin as paper. A few tried to dance again, alone in the fields, but their bodies wouldn't move the same way. Something inside them had been broken. Some never returned to the city. Others came back, but only in body. They avoided crowds, hid from music, slept during the day, and flinched at the sound of drums. The council quietly dismantled the stage. The musicians were paid and dismissed. The blood was washed from the stones, and the records were sealed. No one wanted to remember, but the ground remembered, and the walls, and the wind, because the silence that followed felt heavier than the dancing ever did. Centuries passed. The city changed. The streets were repaved, the buildings rebuilt, but the story never fully disappeared. Historians and scientists began to ask the same question. What really happened in Strasbourg? How did hundreds of people dance themselves to death, without music, without reason? Some said it was ergot poisoning, a toxic fungus that grows on damp rye bread. It can cause hallucinations, twitching, even convulsions. Maybe the poor had eaten spoiled grain, and their minds betrayed them. But ergot comes and goes. It doesn't last for weeks. And it doesn't make people move in sync, like puppets tied to the same invisible string. Others blamed mass hysteria. The people of Strasbourg were poor, tired, and scared. The summer had been harsh. Famine was creeping in. Maybe the stress broke something deep inside the collective mind. One woman danced, and the fear of it became contagious. Like laughter, like panic, like grief. A few believed it was a spiritual sickness, that the plague wasn't in the body, but in the soul, that the people had no words left for their suffering, so their bodies spoke instead. And then there are those who say it was something darker, something that lives deep beneath the skin of the world. A spirit, a curse, a shadow that moves from town to town, when too many hearts are heavy, and no one is listening. We may never know the truth, but maybe that's not the point, because what happened in Strasbourg wasn't just strange. It was a cry for help, a cry that no one heard in time. The dancing plague of 1518 was real. It happened. It shook a city. It broke bodies, and it left behind a question no one could answer. But maybe it wasn't about disease, or demons, or curses. Maybe it was about pain, unspoken, unseen, unbearable. Maybe the people weren't dancing because they wanted to, but because they didn't know how else to survive. Because when the world ignores your suffering, even agony starts to move like rhythm. It makes you wonder, how many people today are still dancing, smiling in public, breaking in private? How many people laugh a little too loud, just to hide what's aching inside? We look for logic in tragedies. But sometimes, the most terrifying part of a story is that it doesn't make sense. It just hurts. And in Strasbourg, in 1518, that pain became music, and that music became death. So the next time you see someone moving too fast, ask yourself, are they dancing? Or are they trying not to fall apart? If this story moved you, take a moment. Breathe. Think about the unseen battles people carry, and the quiet ways they cry for help. If you want more true stories like this, strange, forgotten, and human, subscribe to the channel. We uncover the mysteries the world left behind. And if you felt something tonight, share this video with someone who needs silence, a story, and maybe a little understanding. You're not alone, and neither were they.